Welcome to Conversations on Care. Happy Friday, our Facebook talk show, bringing together our service providers, our clients, and caregivers to help families better understand and cope with aging parents with chronic care needs. My name is Julie Collada, and I'm the founder and CEO of Open Arms Solutions. And Open Arms is a home care agency serving the Chicagoland area, focusing on inspired home care solutions for seniors with chronic conditions such as dementia, Parkinson's, and other movement disorders. It is our mission to help our families through this journey and to know that their loved one is living their best life possible. If you find these dialogues helpful, please give us a like and a share so that it can reach more people who would benefit from this information. If you have a topic or a question or topics you'd like to learn more about, please write them in the comments section below. So, with me today is Marcy Kirschenbaum. Hi, Marcy. Welcome. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hi, Julie. Thanks for having me.
And it looks like, producer, we have the wrong topic on there. It says prevention, intervention, and discharge planning. No, we're actually here to talk about digestion and learning about, having a healthy diet and healthy digestion. So and it's insights into common digestive issues. So I want to tell everybody here a little bit about Marcy, because she's got amazing credentials, and I've had the privilege of listening to Marcy talk to one of our senior living communities, a support group, and she's just got a wonderful knowledge on this topic. So Marcy is the owner and founder of Enhanced Nutrition LLC, which is a holistic nutrition, and she's a holistic nutritionist in Northbrook, Illinois, assisting both individuals and families in addressing health challenges by incorporating lifestyle factors with functional nutrition, testing to create personalized, manageable, and sustainable nutrition plans. Marcy consults with a variety of health food startups, providing guidance on the product quality and nutrition, and sits on multiple advisory boards. She's a member of the Accreditation Council for Nutrition Professional Education, which accredits master's degree clinical programs in nutrition. She also volunteers with Hunger Resource Network to eliminate hunger in the Chicagoland area. And prior to that, she acted as the lead nutritionist on the Hunger Free Community Project, identifying the Northbrook community level of food insecurity in this role. Thank you again for being here. What a great background.
Thanks.
So, Marcy, tell us, what's your path that got you here? How did you get interested and become a holistic nutritionist?
So this is I always call this my third career, because I was in the corporate world initially. I became a full-time mom, and while I began feeding my kids, I really started paying attention to the food that I was putting in them, learning to read labels. What is this food? Just because it tastes good or looks good doesn't mean it's good for us. And when I really found with my youngest child, he had chronic ear infections, and the doctors wanted to have him have tubes in his ears, put him on a maintenance antibiotic, and I just felt like that just didn't feel right to me. And I started doing some research and changed his diet, and within 10 days, the fluid was gone. And it was so miraculous. And I thought, wow, this obviously food is medicine. We don't need to do some of these other things that can sometimes be Band-Aids. So that really got me going into it. And then the more I looked into it, I went back to school and got my master's degree, and felt that if I can help my family, I can really reach out and help others.
A master's degree in nutrition?
A master's degree in nutrition. Yes.
That's great.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you for telling us that story. And how long have you had this company now?
I've had this company for 12 years.
That's wonderful. Good for you. So what are, what are the most common issues that you see in symptoms relative to digestion?
Well, the biggest issues that my clients have in general are going to often be the core can be digestive issues. And it's going to be gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, heartburn, burping, uh, can be stomach pains. All you think about what's going on in that kind of middle part of your body that we can't just open up and look at. And so all these things are symptoms, and it's your body's way of trying to get that information to you to say, hey, something needs to be done. It's just that we don't always know how to interpret those symptoms.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, one of the things that we talked about before the show started was, and I'm sure we'll get into this right now, but you have to be able to communicate and feel comfortable talking about what's going on with your body to a nutritionist, to a physician. And lots of people don't feel comfortable really saying what's going on. And I know we're going to talk about that today.
Right. And I will say it right now. So we'll put it out there. And I tell all my clients this, that we talk poop, because it's really important to understand what's going on in the body.
Yeah.
We know what we're putting into our mouths, but it's also important to understand what's coming out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's a lot of information and we don't want to ignore it.
Well, that's the way to do it, is to put it right out there for sure. So what are some of the most common symptoms? You talked about some of them, but what are the most common symptoms, and what can contribute to some of these symptoms?
Well, a lot of things that can contribute to these symptoms, it can be really like a result of inflammation in the body. And that inflammation can present in many different ways. And you get inflammation. It can be from your diet. So what are the food choices? It can be from food allergies, food sensitivities, food intolerances. They all sound similar, but they're all a little nuanced different in how they present. And we also have a lot of toxic exposures in our world. And that can be from our environment. It can be air pollution. It can be from all the plastics that we're exposed to, the plastic water bottles. It can be off-gassing from carpet, furniture, and pesticides. It can be from molds, medications. Medications are important, but they also can cause digestive issues, viruses, bacteria. And we look at then kind of what happens in the gut. We're ending up with like this imbalanced gut bacteria. And it's really important to understand that the gut actually deals with we believe 70% of our immune system is actually found in the gut. And our gut is home to over 100 trillion bacteria. So that's 10 times as many bacteria as there are human cells in the body. And we can't survive without them. But when they are out of balance, that's when we can end up with some of these symptoms.
What was the number of bacteria again?
Over 100 trillion.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yes.
So many people are on medication for GERD or acid reflux. So why is that so common?
Well, acid reflux, or GERD, which is gastroesophageal reflux, it really results in heartburn. And so many people will say, yeah, I have that. And there's actually been a steady rise over the past few decades in the incidence of heartburn. In fact, there's about over 60 million Americans actually suffer from this after a meal. And people know, like, oh, I don't want to lie down after a meal. I need to make sure I'm sitting up so that I don't have all these issues. But actually, experts can't even agree on what's causing all of this or necessarily the best way to treat it. So for starters, you think about GERD is really the expulsion of stomach contact stomach contents back into the esophagus. And the acidity of the fluid is burning the esophageal lining, and it causes that painful sensation in the chest.
Mhm.
And when you have repeated exposure to stomach acid in the esophagus, it actually, we know that there's damage that can be done. So people are put on medications such as H2 blockers, proton pump inhibitors, which are the PPIs. You can get them over the counter, some are prescription, and they're very effective in suppressing the acid production. But it's kind of used as a Band-Aid to address the discomfort because you're not necessarily getting to the root cause.
Are you talking about things like Tums and those kinds of
Tums
things?
is something, yes, Tums counts as something that tries to knock the acid down.
Right.
And when it happens, when you're on these medications, you can actually have a host of side effects if you're on these for long term. Short term use is absolutely, can be very essential for people to say, okay, this is really awful and I've got to get to what's the root cause, what's going on, is it food I'm eating, what is it? But the side effects can actually be nutrient deficiencies, osteoporosis, IBS, and you can actually become dependent on these medications. Now, the good news is that you can make lifestyle changes and use natural remedies that can offer some relief and even target the underlying cause of the reflux. And so what we're really looking for is trying to help people find that cause so they don't need to be on this long term. So we know that our bodies are actually very, very intelligent. And the acidity of the stomach, that acid that our stomach produces, is super important because if we didn't have that, we wouldn't be able to digest our food because it's breaking down our proteins so we can absorb them.
Mhm.
It helps kill bacteria that we don't want to get into our system so we're not sick. So if we're having chronically low stomach acid, it can actually leave us at risk for infections and then be a contributor to IBS, which so many people have.
Yeah.
Another issue with the medications is that our body can become dependent on it. And what happens is we start to take the medication, our body responds by actually increasing acid production because it's like, well, wait, I need this, but you're giving me something that tries to suppress it. Well, like I said, the drugs are very effective in keeping that acid level down. But what happens once we try to go off the medication, it's like opening the floodgates because now our body's been overproducing, but the medication's been holding it down. Medication's gone, lots of acid. And that overproduction actually has like the rebound effect that makes people feel like, no way can I go off of this. I have terrible reflux. It's worse than before. So if you're really interested in trying to get off the medications, you need to talk to your doctor and work with a professional to learn how to do it in a very gradual way, a safe way, and at the same time recognizing what could be the root cause of the reflux. Now, the very interesting thing is that something called hypochlorhydria, which is low stomach acid production, presents the same way as high acid production.
Interesting. You
So,
get the same burning and
yes,
issues?
yes. And what can happen, what the reason that happens is that the low stomach acid can cause the stomach to work harder and churn more, trying to digest the food. And the small amount of acid that we do produce might be splashed around and up into the esophagus. So you're going to take maybe Tums or something that, yes, it will get rid of that burning, but it's not going to address the problem, which is low stomach acid. And more people have low stomach acid than high stomach acid because as we age, we produce less stomach acid.
That makes sense for sure. Now,
So
there's a question that I want to make sure, excuse me, that I want us to get to. It's when clients work with you,
yes.
are they also working with a doctor? And then if the answer is yes, do you communicate with their doctor?
Everyone I work with is I personalize everything. So it depends on the situation, what's going on. As a nutritionist, I do not take people off medication. Doctors have to do that. That's totally up to the doctor and working with the patient.
Mhm.
I help people make lifestyle changes to address health conditions and how to, let's say if it's the digestive issues, maybe making some dietary changes and helping with ideas of how to improve digestion. But I will talk to doctors as needed. And again, it's all depend. Everyone I work with is going to be a little bit different.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Uh, you may have already got, we have another question here. When someone has GERD, how does one or you figure out what the trigger food is in order to get off the medication?
Well, a lot of times it's not just a trigger food. It is more often than not low stomach acid.
Mm.
And I'm going to work on we have to do some kind of crude little tests, like at home little things that are not painful to say, hey, let's see if you, like, there's something I call the baking soda test. When you wake up first thing in the morning, you dissolve a small amount of baking soda in water, drink it, and see how long it takes you to burp. Because ideally,
Hmm.
if you have the right amount of stomach acid or even too much stomach acid, the baking soda with the acid, you kind of think about like those volcanoes people used to make with vinegar and baking
Mhm.
soda.
Mhm.
It All this air comes up, and that's what's going to cause you to burp. If you don't burp, you probably don't have enough stomach acid.
Ah, interesting. Very
So,
interesting.
that's really what we're going to look for is first address digestion. And then, of course, looking at foods. A lot of people say foods like tomatoes and chocolate and maybe peppermint, some of these things make things worse, which they may. And for some people, there are specific foods that seem to cause it. And for others, it's not specific foods. It just kind of comes and they can't connect those. So that's what I work with people. It's like playing detective to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to talk poop.
Yes.
How often should someone have a bowel movement?
So most people are going to have a bowel movement every day. That's really what we want, 1 to 3 times a day. People whose digestive systems are working really efficiently
Mhm.
often feel that they have a bowel movement around, like, after meals, like maybe breakfast, lunch, maybe breakfast, lunch, and dinner. More than 3 times a day, you start to wonder what's going on. But typically, most people are going to be once a day. And when you have that bowel movement, you really want to see what's coming out in terms of, I'll say what I'm trying to look at is how long does it take the transit time of the food to get through the digestive system.
Mhm.
And sometimes people who tend more towards constipation, it can take 3 days for what they ate today to finally see it coming out.
Mhm.
And the way you can figure out your transit time is,
Mhm.
we all know corn does not digest real well. We
Oh.
can If we know we ate corn, when does that show up in the stool? You can also, like, eat maybe a tablespoon of sesame seeds or beets. Beets can make the stool reddish. And if you eat those one day, when do you see that showing up in the stool? So
Mhm.
ideally, you want your transit time to be less than 48 hours.
Okay, that's very interesting information. Um, what else should we know about poop that we haven't
Well,
known?
okay. So when I work with my clients, I ask all these questions. What is the form? Is it If you're constipated, maybe there's hard, small pieces. If you have diarrhea, very loose, maybe it's like soft serve ice cream. Maybe it's ideally what we want is a smooth log, or a log with maybe some cracks in it, but a nice log. That's what stool should look like. Color is important. Is it a shade of brown? Is it yellow or red or black or white and clay colored or green? All these things are going to be saying something that's going on in the system, or we have to first think, did I eat something? Like beets can turn the stool red. It's not blood. It might just be the beets, but it can initially scare people. If you know you didn't eat beets and you know that and you're seeing that the stool's very red, you call your doctor. And that is typically going to be lower intestinal bleeding. Mm. And just like if the stool's black, it can be upper intestinal bleeding because the blood darkens as it ages. And so a black stool can be a concern, but it could also be maybe you ate a lot of blueberries. So you make sure that you're really thinking about what it is I ate. And if there's no connection there, make sure you contact your doctor.
All right. Very important information.
Yeah. Sure. And then a couple other things, looking for undigested food besides the foods that we know we don't digest well, like corn and some of the seeds and nuts that we might see. If you have noticing maybe a lot of leafy greens in the stool or other things, then you know that you're not breaking the food down well. You notice if there's greasiness in the water, that means your fats aren't being well absorbed. Mm-hmm. You also want to notice the odor. Is it something that you feel you could clear a room with and you haven't been sick? There's definitely an imbalance in the bacteria, because it's the bacteria in the gut that are also contributing to the odor, not just that stool is waste.
Oh, good information. So obviously you have to be able to be comfortable enough to talk about these details, because the details matter, clearly.
Yes. It's really helpful for practitioners to get all this information.
Are there other symptoms that can be related to gut issues?
There are. A lot of people don't realize that issues in the gut don't just stay in the gut. It can actually, from the food choices that you're eating and maybe poor nutrient absorption, you can have fatigue. Mm-hmm. It can impact your mood. There's a very strong gut-brain connection that what we're eating is going to obviously impact how we feel, but it's also in our gut. We make the majority of the neurotransmitter serotonin, which is a feel-good neurotransmitter. We make it in the gut. It's not made in the brain. So if our gut is out of balance, often we're not going to be making that serotonin, and we can present with anxiety and depression. We also can have skin issues, eczema, psoriasis, other rashes. Can think of hives. It's often coming from the gut. And as well as cognition and our brain fog, all can be impacted by what's going on in the gut.
Wow, that's amazing. There was a point where I was, I went to a functional analysis from a functional doctor.
Yes.
And one of the things they talked about, I don't believe I had it, but they talked about a leaky gut.
Yeah. What does that mean? Yeah,
it sounds pretty awful, doesn't it?
It sounds awful. It does. But as a nicer term is gut permeability. And you look at my hands. This is like 2 cells, and in our gut, it's a very just single cell lining, and the cells should be tight together. And if there's inflammation going on, and the cells might come apart a little bit, and you can see there's the leakiness right through here. So that allows sometimes maybe some bacteria, viruses, bigger molecules of food that typically wouldn't get into the bloodstream are able to get in because of the leakiness. So what you want to do is address the gut issues to bring inflammation down, and it tightens up those cells again, it holds everything together, and then you can repair your gut that way.
That's a great explanation, which I never received. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
What are some basic ideas that you can give us to improve overall digestion and gut health?
The first thing that we always want to make sure with digestion, I mean, and just overall health, is that we're well hydrated. As we age, we tend to not notice that we're thirsty. We don't think we need as much water, or because of maybe some urinary incontinence issues or medications that have side effects, we don't want to be drinking so much. But it's really important to drink because that just helps your overall health and inflammation. Now, in terms of what we're eating, we want to make sure that we are limiting our processed foods and sugars, because those are things that our body doesn't need and it doesn't recognize as food, so it doesn't always know what to do with it. Sugar, it does recognize, we do know how to process sugar, but too much sugar is inflammatory. And so when we have too much inflammation, we can end up with leaky gut and other health issues. And at the beginning, I talked about just inflammation being a problem that can contribute to all sorts of disease. And that's so we want to really limit those processed foods and sugars. We want to make sure we're getting enough fiber. And most people are pretty low in fiber. We're looking to get at least 25 grams per day. And that can be from beans, whole grains, vegetables, and fruit. Now, some people need to be on low fiber diets because this is just general. I'm giving this information. It's not personalized. So if you know you're one that cannot tolerate high fiber, you don't do high fiber. But in general, this will help a lot with stool transit time. Fiber is very important for that because diets that are low in fiber and let's say high in sugars definitely have a negative impact even on the gut bacteria, because fiber feeds good bacteria, sugar feeds the bad bacteria, it feeds yeast and parasites. And we want to make sure that we're feeding all those 100 trillion bacteria what is going to support us. Great. And also for digestion, it's really important is movement and exercise. Walking, if you can do maybe water aerobics, even chair yoga, anything that's going to keep you moving is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Should everyone be eating the same foods to optimize their gut health?
So if we look at the foundation of foods that we should be eating, we should be eating what I call real foods, like food that you can recognize, that you know where it came from. And so in that sense, yes, everyone should be eating good protein and good carbohydrates, like from grains, vegetables, and fruits, and healthy fats from avocado and olives and nuts and seeds. Those are all things that, yes, everyone should be eating that. Now, should we all be eating the same diet? No. One diet doesn't fit all people's bodies. We're all unique, but we want to make sure we are getting enough protein in our diet. And so those basics, yes, we eat the same. The nuances, we're all different.
Great. Thank you for that. So what are some ideas for people who are on a limited budget or are not preparing their own foods, or they're just not in a position in their life to do that?
Okay. So food's expensive these days. It's gotten unbelievably expensive. And of course, the higher the quality of food, the higher the price. Yep. So what we want to look at is how can we get good quality, like protein whether maybe when you're choosing if you eat animal protein, maybe chicken thighs instead of a chicken breast, because that's going to be more cost effective. You want to still look at like the fresh fruits and vegetables, or the fresh frozen that are not in any other syrups or juices. You just want to pick those types of things. Um, when we're looking at when other people are preparing food, for instance, even if you're living in maybe an assisted living community, you don't have a lot of options there. And what you can ask, though, I always suggest when people they're serving chicken, can you get sauce on the side? Because it's those sauces that can be high in sugar and high in sodium and high in inflammatory oils, in more than we need. So maybe you just need a little bit of sauce. You would want to maybe choose the whole grains. Do they offer whole grains instead of white rice or white bread? You also can forego dessert and choose fruit. And really trying to keep your sugar intake limited and watch your sodium intake while making sure you're getting your protein and your other nutrients that are so vital. And, being on a budget, we can stretch things. If you tolerate beans well, that's a good source of fiber. You get protein with that, you get carbs, you get all sorts of nutrients with that.
Mhm.
And mixing foods with maybe with some chicken or some fish, doing that really can stretch the meals to be more cost effective that way.
Yeah, great suggestions. Well, we're almost out of time, but we have one more question.
Sure.
Do you help all age groups with their nutritional needs?
I do. I work with people, I meet them where they are and work to understand what are their health goals and what are their health challenges. And we work as a team. And like I said, everything is personalized. So any age, it works. Anyone who's motivated and wanting to address some of their health issues through
Mhm.
lifestyle changes, I
Mhm.
love working with those people.
That's great, Marcy. Thank you so much. Do do we have Marcy's contact information up, Marla? I want to make sure we've got information. How do you want people to reach out to you when they have a question or they'd like to talk to you?
Yeah, they can email me. They can go to my website, which is enhancednutrition.net. They can give me a phone call, and I will typically goes to my voicemail, but I will get back to everybody.
Marla
And
just put that up in the chat so everyone can see that now.
and I'm always willing to have like a 15-minute intro call with people to make sure we'd be a good team working together.
All right, terrific. Thank you so much. I think had an opportunity to hear Marla at a senior living community, did a really a wonderful talk that everyone was just taking every word in. And, the information's really so important and it is great. So
Yes.
thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me, and I really hope that people were able to grab a few pearls out of this information.
I imagine they were. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Julie.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.